Hi YouTube, or again, welcome to my channel. My third video, maybe the first one that you're seeing. This video is going to be about comparing Corsair Scimitar RGB MMO mouse to the Razer Naga mouse. You may have seen my other two videos, they're kind of more just dedicated reviews to each of those mice. And then this video is supposed to be basically a comparison of the Scimitar RGB mouse, specifically to the Razer Naga. I mentioned it in my Razer video, but I'm showing the Trinity here. Mine is the Naga Chroma. In my opinion, even though I haven't used the Trinity, I feel that the Trinity and the Chroma are so comparable that my 5 years with the Naga Chroma is still very relevant, and potentially suggesting the Trinity instead. Basically, they don't produce the Chrome anymore. The Trinity is like the new updated variation of it. This is the one I got back in 2017. This is what they have now. With the only difference being I spent $60 for this mouse. This one's, I guess, $81, and they give you these plates that you can like change. I did have a Naga mouse before I got the Chroma. Basically, it was only green, so no RGB. These buttons here were not mechanical switches. I think they've moved over to that fully. This one has the mechanical switches too. And it did have these removable or changeable plates. I never used the other two. I only used the number pad here. I think that's just the way to go. So yeah, so I mean, for the most part, I mean, if you're here, looking at this, maybe you're considering getting an MMO mouse, using a regular mouse, and you're thinking about getting an MMO one, get one. They're just better. They have, they're literally, there's some games that I wouldn't even play. If I didn't have the MMO mouse, I wouldn't want to play it using the keyboard for, whenever you have 17 different buttons or 60 different buttons. It's just not fun. I don't even want to, I don't know. It's just get an MMO mouse if you're thinking about getting one. Say you're trying to decide which one to get. They've used an MMO mouse before, and you're not sure which one to upgrade to, or you are thinking about taking that first leap, and you don't know if you should get the Corsair branded one or the Razer one. There is a Logitech one. It's the cheapest of the bunch. It's like 35 bucks. I've never really used Logitech. I'm sure that this mouse is fine. It's got good ratings. I think you'd be good getting any of these three mice, to be completely honest. However, there are going to be small differences with them. Now, while this video is going to be focused on the differences between these two, as the Corsair and the Razer one are the ones I have experience with, the one comment I can make about the Logitech is, well, it's cheaper. It does have a 20th button with it, which is this like click right here for like I guess your ring finger. That it's your right hand. So you're right-handed. I don't know. Some people like it. Some people turn it off because they accidentally click it. I don't know. It's got the RGB settings. Less lights though. Obviously, it's only the number pad. It seems. But yeah, this is about these two mice though. And these are the ones that I would recommend, especially if you already have like a Corsair keyboard or a Razer keyboard. Their software tends to only work with their software, or their products tend to only work with their software. So you're probably better off just sticking with one of those. However, in my experience, I've had a Corsair keyboard for many years and the Razer Naga mouse. That's because I started off with a Razer Naga mouse, like way back, like I feel like 2012 or something. And I didn't even get a mechanical keyboard until like, shoot, like maybe 2014 or something. It took me a few years. It took me many years, I should say, actually, to get a mechanical keyboard. And I went with the Corsair one at the time. So I don't know, having mixed, products, it works fine. I guess to start getting into some of the differences, like the Corsair software. Personally, I prefer the Corsair software in general. I'm going to start with software, then I'll get into like the close-ups for each of the mice. But speaking of software, my experience with Corsair, they do not have many updates. You're going to plug in your product the first time, it might have to update once, and then after that, it's pretty rare to get an update. This is like the keyboard settings. Here's the mouse settings. This is more important, I suppose. A huge perk is that When it comes to mice, for Corsair, they kind of have two settings. They have the software settings, which means while the software is on and running, these are the settings that the mouse is going to run. And then they have hardware settings, which is, say, the software isn't running because, you just don't want it on. Or say you're plugging in the mouse into someone else's computer. Like, all of these settings are just saved directly to the mouse and, like, the little chip inside. Very, very nice feature. I love this. Okay, like the Razer mouse doesn't, there are no hardware settings essentially. All right, there is some third-party stuff you can use. I'm not a fan of it. So essentially with Corsair, you only have to, you have the option for both. I guess the small little, like where it's not perfect is for their hardware settings on their mouse, this very top button, you cannot change that one. It just changes the profile. So you could essentially have 3 profiles. I only have one because I don't really mess with that stuff. But you can have up to 3 designated for this, and that button just swaps between the 3. You can't change that as far as I can tell. I did a bunch of Google searching. It's just not something they have. But beyond that, I mean, on the software side, assuming you have that running, then you can change that button to whatever you want. I would say, like, the software is a little confusing at first. If you saw my Corsair review video, you'll kind of see I forgot how it works. But essentially, whenever you want to change something, you click on the little plus symbol. It starts off as that name, then you choose what you want to do. So in this case, if I want to remap a button, I'm going to choose, this is what you want to remap it to. So like, are you choosing one of the A through Z's? Are you choosing a function key? Say I wanted to change this button to like the forward button or to scroll up. That's somewhat common, I suppose. I would change this from macro to mouse button and then, forward button or scroll up. And that's basically it. And then it just saves, like automatically. You don't actually have to save anything. If you wanted to be certain, you can click on this, click the profile, and just hit overwrite. That'll basically guarantee it. But from my understanding, this is actually more so related to saving your hardware settings. But for the most part, I think their software is pretty easy to use. So that's my comments on the Corsair software. I do love this hardware portion of it. I touched on it in my other videos, but for the most part, what this means is if the software is not running, all of your settings are saved. So that means if you lock your computer, this color is going to stay the same. Whereas with Razer, which I guess I'll just touch on that, it doesn't work that way. Like, your settings on the Razer mouse, they only work while the software is running. Okay, it's just how it is for them. So if I lock my computer, this, little setting here, these colors I have, they're going to change to like an RGB rotation. I guess just to show it real quick, maybe it'll show. I'll go full screen. So yeah, see this? Hopefully you can see that. And this is what happens if you're turning on your computer for the first time of the day. You're restarting it. Your computer's locked. Sleep settings are on, so it goes to sleep. That's what you're going to be seeing. And then once you come back, then it will change, back to the settings that you have. And it's not just the colors. Like, that applies to any of the buttons that you changed, your sensitivity settings, everything. So for the most part, if you're getting the Razer MMO mouse, you're stuck with that software. It needs to be running. Something that, why is that a problem? Maybe you're going to be running your software anyways. I hate how often the Razer software needs an update. All right, it's not daily, but it feels like my Razer mouse needs an update every day. Every time I turn on my computer, it feels like it needs to be updated. I don't know why it's so frequent, but it is too frequent. All right, it's enough that it just annoys me. So I don't know, that's something to be aware of. With Razer, expect lots of updates. All right, I'm not going to tell you for certain it's every day or that it's every week. Maybe it's only twice a month. It feels too often. All right, Corsair, there's like never an update. All right, it's just never an issue. With Razer, it feels like it's all the time. I don't know why it has to be that way. But anyways, this is what it looks like whenever you want to set it. It is definitely easier and more intuitive, I think, for a stranger. Like, you just click on the button that you want, and then you just choose what you want it to do, right? And then it tells you on the side what you have selected. Like, that's so nice and easy to understand. It's very intuitive, right? Whereas with Corsair, it's not showing it now, but essentially it tells you the button here, like it's not related to like what button you're selecting. It is more confusing. I'm sure they could fix it someday. But oh well. I mean, unless you're like big into the customization, you're probably not going to be using it that much. It'll be a little confusing at first. Maybe it takes you 10, 20, 30 minutes to get everything situated, depending on, how often you use this kind of stuff. But once you got it, you're probably going to be fine and you won't have to worry about it again for potentially a really long time. I mean, I guess you have to sign into an account, right? Razer makes you sign into an account. I don't even remember if Corsair did. If you're someone who cares about creating accounts with companies and whatnot, Corsair does not seem to require that. Didn't even realize. Yeah, as far as I can tell, they don't you don't need to create an account. You have to create an account with Razer though. So I would say that's something to be aware of. I'll try and give a summary at the end here for each. That's kind of what you're looking at. Here's like they have this Chroma Studio. This is where you mess with the RGB settings. I think this is pretty intuitive and nice looking too. You got a lot of options. I'm not really a huge fan of messing with this stuff. Like kind of as you may have seen, I'm pretty basic with what my settings are, but if you care about that, they've got a lot to work with and the UI is nice and intuitive. So, to talk about some of the like physical differences, now that I've talked about the software differences, I'll pull it over to my other camera. Get my side by side. And maybe it was a bad idea to record this video right now. I'm getting really hungry. But anyways, here's what the mice look side by side. I would say they're about as wide as one another. They feel like honestly in my hand, I would say the Corsair does feel a bit wider in the palm. Like I feel like it does embrace my palm a little bit more nicely compared to the Razer mouse. This one does feel a bit smaller in my hand. Depending on your hand size, the Corsair might be better for you. Just in and of itself, for that reason. Corsair does also the scimitar. It lets you move this number pad, so that's very nice. I think that touches on it if it can accommodate more hand sizes. I think if you have smaller hands, there's nothing wrong with something being too wide. I think it's actually just if you're concerned about getting arthritis or, hand pains or muscle fatigue, in your hands because you're using the mouse all day. In my experience, a wider mouse, something that fits more of your palm or lets it rest on more, and you don't have as much of that, close sensation, that's just better for you. So if you got small hands, you can't go wrong with a bigger mouse, at least in my experience, especially given that they let you adjust it. As you can see, all the way back, the smallest setting, that's actually what works best for me. Like that feels just as comfortable as the mouse with Razer as it does with Corsair. So really, I mean, just kind of speculating right here in the moment, I feel like this distance here at the shortest is about as, that's what Razer did with their mouse. They basically accommodated to the smaller hands. So if you got bigger hands, you actually may want to think twice about the Razer Naga, just for that reason, because they let you, if you got longer thumbs, well, you can reach a bit further up. So that's one difference. You don't have the left and right click with Corsair on the scroll wheel. Now, that's not going to matter for some people. Some people, it's actually really nice and convenient. I play a lot of MMOs. That's probably like my main game that I play right now. So, being able to bind things to this to do extra stuff, maybe it's like how you tab target if you play those kind of games, or, you set it to like mount up or whatever you set it to. Pretty convenient to have. I've been using a Naga mouse for many years, for like a decade almost. So losing that, not not too it's something I'd have to get used to put simply. I would say another difference that I noticed while using these mice is the placement of these middle buttons here. So, like with this mouse, like everything feels nice, but trying to press these, like it's a reach. I almost have to move, like I can't press the back button at all with my index finger, like without lifting my hand, essentially. I can barely press this front mouse button. Whereas with the Razer mouse, I find it very easy to click both of them. It's hard to tell, but I can click both of them without lifting up my hand completely. Whereas with this one, that's a painful stretch. Like, that's not comfortable to do. I can, but it's not at all comfortable. So I personally prefer the feel of this a great deal more. I did find, though, because I've been using this mouse for a while, basically all I did to get around that is instead of using the tip of my finger to press this, to press the back button, I could just use the base of my index finger right here. So it's a little bit to get used to, and you kind of have to do a little bit of finesse to get it. So I'd have to move my back a little bit, or my hand back a little bit, but it worked out well. I didn't actually really have any issues. There's the texture difference. So for the scimitar, you have this texture here and here. That helps you find your place on the mouse. Now, something I guess I never really talked about, but one of the reasons why I decided to look at getting a new MMO mouse after all these years has to do with Final Fantasy 14. I have a ninja, or that was my job. I got it to level 50. I was like, okay, this job seems pretty cool. I started looking ahead to seeing what buttons I was going to have to press in the future, and to my surprise, I was going to have like at least 20 buttons. And I was like, holy crap. Like, that's like, I think it's more. With all the buttons and the job roles and stuff, I could be up to like 30 buttons. So I was like, damn, like, that's crazy. And at the time, because of all of my years of experience, I've only been using these top 6 buttons. That's where it feels very comfortable and natural to press these top 6. Like, using these top 6 is amazing. Like, it feels so nice and comfortable, and why I just recommend an MMO mouse over a regular mouse. Like, even if you only ever use the top 6, like, I feel like for most people, that's going to be great for you. It's going to feel very comfortable and natural after the first day to use these top 6 buttons for your abilities. And then if you bind them with like control or shift, so you're holding control and then pressing 1 or shift 1 or even alt if that's an option, then this 6 turns into 24 very easily. And that's how I've been playing for years. But then I discovered this class or this job that's got like 30 buttons, maybe more, I don't quite recall. And I'm just like, damn, like, that's not gonna work for me. So I wanted to find a new mouse. I was like, well, pressing these bottom 6 is not very comfortable. So I ended up getting this mouse because I was like, cool, I'll be able to shift this where I want it, so it's more comfortable. Well, to my surprise, because I'm dumb, I guess, whenever I had it set like this is what I envisioned in my mind, right? See, beforehand, my thumb is resting on the 1, right? And you may have just seen, I said this is where it's comfortable. This is like the same spot. This is what I ended up going with whenever, after using this for a couple of weeks. I ended up putting it back here. And the reason why is because whenever it's like this, stretching your thumb up, not at all comfortable. All right, that's just like a hand strain, at least in my opinion, waiting to happen. So what I ended up learning is that really I shouldn't be resting my thumb on the 1, 2, 3. You gotta rest your thumb on like the 4, 5, 6. So the 4, 5, 6. If you're trying to use all the buttons on this, and trying to build up those habits and get good at that, I would recommend resting your thumb along the 4, 5, 6, no matter which mouse you use. And then reaching up to the 1, 2, 3 is not going to feel so bad at all. Same for both of the mice. And the 7, 8, 9 becomes very easy. So in my mind, 4, 5, 6 is like my main 3, and then 7, 8, 9. And then possibly 1, 2, 3. That's what I'm doing right now to build the habit. Because it's very easy, I think, to just get stuck using these top 6. And if you're trying to use these other 6 buttons, I mean, if you're anything like me, it's going to be tough to break that habit once it's been built. So if you don't have the habit yet, I would recommend focusing in the middle. And I think the reason I say it's dumb is because it's kind of like, isn't it obvious that you should start in the middle of the 12 buttons versus, on the far edge? But it wasn't for me at the time. Anyways, so that's what I did, and then I discovered that this is basically in the exact same spot as the Naga mouse. So I learned basically what I just shared. I need to start, setting my resting spot more in the center. So once I started doing that, I ended up realizing that I kind of actually like the way Naga has their buttons set up. Even though this is textured, I'm I find it very easy to identify, which button is which. Like, just to be completely honest, like, I thought the texture was going to be a huge bonus, and it is nice. I think if you've never used an MMO mouse before, then this is going to help you out a lot. But because I've been using the Nagas for basically a decade, like, this feels just fine to me. Like, I can tell where I'm at just by feel. And then I touched on in my other video, but for the most part, I rest in the 4, 5, 6, and then I try and use the base of my thumb to hit these last 3 buttons. And something I did find with the scimitar though, is using the base of my thumb for the last 3 is not as comfortable to do as with the Naga. I think trying to use all 12 buttons is, for me at least, it's much more comfortable with the Naga. So I guess this is kind of a spoiler, but I'm sticking with the Naga. I'm gonna keep talking about some other differences though, because I almost want to say I would just recommend the Corsair. I think it's gonna be able to accommodate a wider range of hand sizes, especially given that this can move. If you've never used an MMO mouse before, then I think you're gonna find that this texture is gonna be very useful for you in the beginning to build those habits. If you're someone who can try both or you're used to Naga products, I think that the button presses, like the feel of using this Naga, it does feel superior. Like I love the way that this button press feels compared to pressing these buttons. And also using the base of my thumb to press these bottom 3 is more difficult on the Corsair mouse versus the Naga. Um, and then I think I touched on, I prefer using the Naga mouse to use these buttons, which I use quite a bit, versus the Corsair. It's not as comfortable at all. It seems I wish that, this was pushed up more, basically, closer to that scroll wheel perhaps. I know, because then I wouldn't have to, right, reach my index finger back too far. But anyways, in terms of the physical elements, that's kind of my opinions. I guess just as another quick reiteration, Corsair is probably, if you've never gotten one before, I think you'd probably be better off with the Corsair. I wish I preferred the Corsair mouse, but I mean the way a button press feels in your hands, like that's for me at least with gaming, especially on a keyboard and mouse, that's part of the satisfaction. Like that satisfies me to get this click. You can't hear the clicks because of my mic settings, but I like the way it feels, so I guess that's what matters more. Anyway, so that's that. I guess one other small thing, I did feel that this mouse, it moves much more smoothly on the mouse pad. Like it's a smoother, there's not as much friction, I suppose, compared to this Corsair. I don't know if it's because there's a weight difference or because of what they have on the base of this, but this one feels slightly rougher. So after using this for so long and jumping over to this mouse, I was like, oh man, I have to put a bit more effort in just to move this mouse around on the mouse pad. And it's very slight, right? This is very slight stuff, but it's noticeable, right? Whenever you're on a computer all day, you kind of pay attention to that stuff. So maybe it's something that would improve in time. I don't quite recall if I mentioned it, but I have had this mouse for about 5 years. So, maybe it wasn't as smooth in the beginning. I can't say for certain. I've only had this one for a couple weeks. But yeah, so that's kind of it for the physical. I don't know. I think either way you'd be fine with both mice, but take those comments as you will. And then something I touched on in my other videos, this has to do with the software side. Basically, despite the Razer software being very easy and intuitive, I suppose, to use, at least in the beginning, the biggest limitation is definitely that the software has to run for your settings to change. So, like, if I lock my computer, right, it changes to this RGB color, and that sucks. Like, if I'm restarting my computer, if I hate that. It's like you have these RGB settings, right? You could have lights set up, you have this nice little, space, and you're stuck with these basic RGB like rotating colors. Like the keyboard stays the same color. I really don't like that about the Razer mouse. It's a real pet peeve of mine. And I wanted to change to Corsair almost just for that reason, just because I dislike the software so much. But I can't get away from how this feels. Like sadly, it does just feel nicer. But yeah, so I mean, the Corsair one, I think I mentioned it, but in their software, you can change the hardware colors to where they stay whether it's locked or not. That is a huge pro in my book. But yeah, so there's that. So I mean, overall, like which one would I recommend? Honestly, at the end of the day, if you've never had an MMO mouse, I think you should go with the Corsair mouse. If you've just never had one before and this is your first time, this one, it's cheaper, right? This one's $71, about 72, let's just say. Really 75 because of tax, maybe a little bit more. And this one's going to be 81 bucks. So this one's at least $10 more. This one does have these plates that you can change out. I never used it. Maybe you would. The little buttons right here, clicking this, the scroll wheel left and right, that is kind of nice. I can't deny that I do like that. I don't think I mentioned it in this video, but my mouse wheel, the color, the blue LED, it did die. So I only have green and red now. So I can only do a combination of colors with those two. Just thought I'd mention that. It doesn't matter because how I have my RGB colors set up, but these LEDs can die. 5 years for a $60 mouse that's still working fine. I can't complain about that. But yeah, so I don't know. At the end of the day, the Corsair mouse, I think being able to change those hardware colors is a huge plus. I feel like it is more customizable for a larger set of hands, be they big or small. So I think that is a plus. It's a little bit cheaper. I don't know. I don't I can't say I think it's a solid mouse. Like I wish I preferred it, to be honest. But I do at the end of the day just like how this Naga mouse feels whenever I press the buttons. And this like it's textured but everything feels the same. And these just feel so different. I don't know how to explain exactly, but they did do a good job. Like I'm I gotta give credit where credit's due. I think the Corsair mouse just looks nicer. I do like the logo more. Um, I I am a fan. I don't know. I think you're gonna have a somewhat tough decision in a way, but at the same time, I think you're gonna be fine with whichever one you chose. So like if you already have the Razer keyboard, well you're basically stuck with Razer software anyways. So you're probably gonna be better off just getting the Razer Naga mouse, assuming budget's not an issue. Like you'll probably be just fine with it. But if you got the Corsair equipment, probably gonna want to go with Corsair. However, if you're anything like me, that may not be the case, right? I'm gonna stick with my Corsair keyboard and I'm gonna stick with this Razer Naga mouse, despite, the software dislikes that I have. Because, yeah, the color thing, it really does annoy me. And I don't update the software anymore with my Razer thing. I have it turned off and I'll update it once every couple months or whatever, whenever I feel like it needs it. I don't get why they need so many darn updates. I think this mouse is going to work for me just fine despite that. I hope this video was helpful. Please feel free to, ask any questions in the comments below. I mentioned it in one of my other videos, but I do stream on Twitch. I'm basically just playing video games in my own free time, but I wanted to, make myself available to any people that had any questions. My YouTube channel, I plan to have like a variety of content on it, at least for now. I'm a beginner and I'm just gonna do my own thing. So I'll be there, basically Sunday through Saturday, 6 to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It could change in the future, and I'm not on every day. Stuff happens. But if you want to ask me questions live, feel free to check me out there. Otherwise, ask your questions in the comments and I'll try and answer those. Never done that before, but I'm sure it's easy. But yeah, I don't know. I am going to put links, Amazon links to buy either of these mice in the description below. I would get a commission of some kind for that. I'm trying to be like an Amazon affiliate, if I do review videos like this for any Amazon products I buy. I literally bought both of these on Amazon, so I figured why not? I think I get like a percent back or something. So I don't know if you were thinking about getting one of these mice, if you use that link, from what I understand, I somehow get a kickback from that. I don't know. I guess I'll find out if that works. But yeah, I hope this video was helpful. You'll be good either way with whichever mouse you choose, to be honest. But, there you go. Those are the differences that I found and that I noticed. Yeah, I hope you have a nice rest of your day. This has been a long 3-video experience for me. And kind of fun, though. Kind of fun. Looking forward to the future. Alrighty, bye.